All right, well, here we are at the end of an exciting session. It was a great talk that we just had, and we have Deborah Lapidus, the national organizer with Corporate Accountability International, a membership organization that protects people by waging and winning campaigns that challenge irresponsible and dangerous corporate actions around the world. She organizes public officials, students, members, and activists around the country to get involved with the Think Outside the Bottle campaign. And as a graduate of Green Corps, the field school for environmental organizing, Ms. Lapidus has traveled around the country coordinating grassroots environmental and electoral campaigns. So please welcome our final speaker, Deborah Lapidus, with me.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for the opportunity to speak here today, and thank you to all of you for sticking through the final presentation of this wonderful conference. Again, my name is Deborah Lapidus, and I'm the national organizer with Corporate Accountability International's Think Outside the Bottle campaign. And today I would like to address the world water crisis from a human perspective, and to really focus on the importance of our public water systems, address the dangers of bottled water, and then end on what all of you can do to make sure that everyone can have access to the water that they need. Now I'd like to start just to take a minute to tell you about the organization I'm representing today. Corporate Accountability International, again, is a membership-based organization based out of Boston that works to protect people around the world and the environment from dangerous and irresponsible corporate practices. We got our start in the late 70s challenging Nestle's marketing of infant formula in the developing world in places where it was clear that people were mixing it with unsafe water, and it was leading to the death of millions of babies around the world. And we launched an international boycott, and it led to international regulation of infant formula marketing. More recently, we've taken on big tobacco and worked with the World Health Organization to foster and build global support for a global tobacco control treaty that currently protects over 80% of the world's population from tobacco industry marketing, advertising, and sponsorship. But now we are facing one of the greatest challenges facing humanity today, and the issue that brought all of us together in this conference, and that is the world's water. I don't think I need to convince you at this point that we are facing a tremendous world water crisis, and I'm not going to repeat the statistics you've already heard that are very alarming, and we know that this problem is likely to get worse as global warming spreads droughts and with increased pollution and depletion. But the real story here is not in these numbers. The real story is in the lives of people who are impacted by this crisis every day. And so I'd like to take just a minute to tell you the story of the boy that you see here. And this story was told to me by one of my coworkers, Stacy, who last year was sent on a work trip to the southern African country of Zambia. And she had a free day to go explore around the capital city of Lusaka. And she walked into a village, and what she saw was a long line of women and girls with jugs waiting for water to come out of a shared spigot. And it probably looks something like this. I'm sorry I don't have the real picture. But this is a different part of the world. This is India, where women are waiting for water from a water truck vendor that comes into town once a week and sells pricey water to this community, and then they walk with it miles back to their families. But going back to Zambia, Stacy saw in this long line of women one boy, and it's the boy you see in this photo, and so she decided to go talk to him, and his name is Michael. And she asked Michael what he was doing, and he said it's his role and his family to walk for miles every day with these jugs, fill them up with water, and then bring it back to his family. And on that day, Michael was fortunate because he was able to fulfill that task. But on other days, Michael is not so fortunate because either his family doesn't have the money they need to buy that water, or he does the walk for nothing because there is no water coming out of the spigot, because wealthy communities in town or the industries get priority access to the water use so much of it that there isn't enough left for this community. And so on days like that, Michael's family has to resort to drinking whatever source of water is available to them, which is often highly contaminated and polluted. And so Stacy asked Michael why he was the only boy in this line of women, and Michael explained that this used to be his sister's role, but she had died earlier that year from drinking unsafe water. And so now he is filling in her footsteps. And I don't know, I look at Michael and think about what my life was like when I was his age. He's probably about 7. And, I was going to school and playing with friends. And, Michael is spending the bulk of his day walking and hoping to get water for his family. And that takes a significant toll on people's lives, and that is the plight of over 1 billion people, as we've talked about, around the globe, 1 out of every 6 of us who do not have the water that we need to survive. And that's why we are so committed to ensuring that everyone can have affordable access to the water that they need. Now, believe it or not, things weren't so different here in the U.S. a little over a century ago. We didn't have public water systems like we do today. They were piecemeal, privately owned, and only the wealthiest segments of society had clean water. And that was about 5% of the population in places like Boston and New York. And diseases like cholera were extremely rampant. And so we made a national commitment to building strong public water systems. And this is what you think of today with, the taps that we take for granted, and the piping that's underground. And these systems were a great equalizer here in the U.S. and a tremendous boon to public health, delivering safe, drinking quality water right out of the tap. But now, we're moving backwards. And I'd like to give you just a minute to read this cartoon if you can see it. If you can't, I apologize. But through tricky marketing and clever labels, we have an industry, the bottled water industry, that is now convincing us to pay higher prices for our water than we do for gasoline. And that's why this Doonesbury cartoon is so poignant in its portrayal of the bill of goods that this bottled water industry has brought us, because we do have safe drinking water coming out of our taps. And so it makes you wonder, what's next? Bottled air? But yet, despite the satire, the marketing is working. So the bottled water industry, once a niche industry, is now a $15 billion and growing market here in the U.S. And 3 out of 4 people drink bottled water. 1 out of 5 drink only bottled water, which we'll talk about a little later. And worldwide, in 2005, people spent $100 billion on bottled water, which, to put that in perspective, some estimates say that that is about the amount needed to provide everyone on the planet with safe drinking water. So it's a great misallocation of resources. And this industry, the $100 billion bottled water industry, is just a piece of a much larger and powerful $400 billion and growing private water industry that is aggressively and surreptitiously seeking to control and profit from the world's dwindling water supplies and are hindering people's access to water in the process. Now, you have to give the industry some credit. They have done a great job marketing bottled water through tens of millions of dollars of advertising. These companies have set out to make us doubt the quality of our tap water, and you can see it in some of these quotes here. As the former VP of Nestle once said, we sell water, so we have to be clever. But we are pulling back the curtain on the bottled water industry, and we're separating the product from the packaging. For example, we had for over 3 years tens of thousands of people contacting Pepsi, the bottler of Aquafina, which is the largest bottled water brand. And in response to our campaign, Pepsi agreed to change every label to reveal the fact that actually the water in this bottle is not coming from that snow-capped mountain that you see on the label, but from our public water systems. So it's basically bottled tap water, sold back to us at thousands of times the price. And now consumers can at least read that on the label We're actually calling on the bottled water industry at large to be more transparent about the sources and quality of the water they bottle, as well as to stop threatening local control of water when siting and operating their bottled water plants. And I'll get back to what I mean by that in just a minute. But really, what's the big deal? Well, the big concern is that bottled water is actually changing the very way that we think about our water. So instead, now we're starting to see water as this high-priced luxury commodity rather than a human right. And I just want to share an anecdote that really exemplifies this for me. So I was at a campaign event that our interns organized 2 summers ago in East Boston. And it was a concert for kids and teens. And I was talking with a boy named Lewis, who was probably about 10 years old, about the concept of what water means as a human right. And how, we all need it to survive, just like the air we breathe. And so it's unfair for companies to be able to buy and sell water for enormous profits. And he looked at me and he said, "So you think that the companies should just give us water for free?" And I was a little taken aback, but I stopped and I realized that, Lewis is so accustomed to seeing water for sale on grocery store shelves or in vending machines that he thinks of it sort of like a product, like an iPod. Like something that if you have the money, you buy it, and if you don't, well, too bad. And it's fine to think about paying for water, as we talked about yesterday, paying for the service that the public water system provides, enough to cover that service. But it's different the extent to which full generations now are actually growing up thinking that water is something that comes from a bottle. And that is a really dangerous trend. And I want to ask, how many of you know people who every single time they're thirsty, they go to the they go to the vending machine instead of to the public water fountain or to the tap? Just raise your hand. Okay, so almost everyone in the room. And it's actually now 1 out of 5 people in this country that believe the only safe place to get water is from a bottle. And in fact, bottled water is far less regulated than our tap water. Studies show that it's no safer. And 40% of bottled water comes from already treated municipal tap water anyway. Now, why does this matter? This probably is the biggest concern. So as we start to doubt the quality of our tap water, we begin to distrust the ability of our governments to provide us with safe drinking water, and we turn to corporations instead. And this is dangerous at a time when our public water systems are in great need for renewed investment. Currently, we have a $22 billion funding gap in the money that our cities need for water infrastructure updates and the money that's available to them. And so you wonder, in the face of such shortfalls, what the future of our water looks like. This money is needed for repairing pipes, dealing with the leakages that we talked about yesterday, and many other issues. And the real question is, if we continue down this path, are we going to have 2 water streams, which is basically one for the world's wealthy and one for everyone else? And is this the future of our drinking water? I don't know if you can't see that, but the water fountain kind of tucked away behind a vending machine, a common image in many schools and other places. And I'm sure that I can promise you that water fountain does not work. There's also significant environmental impacts to the bottled water industry. According to the Pacific Institute, thank you, Peter, it takes about 32 to 54 million barrels of oil every year to meet the American demand for bottled water, and that's to produce the plastic itself and then to ship the water hundreds of miles in trucks or even planes. Think about Fiji water, it comes from 5,000 miles away. So that's a lot of energy and a lot of oil. It's also 4 billion pounds of these plastic bottles that end up in our landfills or as roadside litter or in our incinerators every year from the U.S. Demand for bottled water. So it's all, largely for a product that we don't really need. And then there's also significant environmental impacts when bottlers come into communities and extract hundreds of thousands of gallons of water a day from sensitive watersheds. And I am going to pause here to show you a clip from a recent documentary called Flow, For the Love of Water, about how this is playing out in Michigan. It's not the
At the point that I learned about Nestle's intention of establishing a bottling plant here in Michigan, I thought, Nestle here in the heart of our state, bottling water, this is a big one. They're pumping upwards of 450 gallons per minute. And what that means in ecological terms is that streams are lowering, that what used to be bodies of water are turning into mudflats, lake levels are dropping in the vicinity of this pumping site. Adding insult to injury is the fact that Nestle Corporation doesn't pay 1 cent for the water that they extract. And they're making, it's speculated, upwards of $1.8 million a day in profits off of that water, which belongs to all of us.
So here we are in Michigan. You got a company that wants to pump water out of the stream system, all right? It doesn't own the water. It has a right to use the water like other landowners. So the question is, does their right to use mean they have a right to put it in a bottle and claim ownership and sell it? That was the basic question.
We asked for a moratorium and said, give the people more time to research this, to find out, is this what the community wants? And the township officials basically said, we know what's best.
When citizens hear about a project, you can be sure the company's been there for at least a year already. They've talked with everybody they need to talk to. They've been given the green light informally.
Nestle Corporation received $10 million in tax abatements over 10 years. So not only are they not paying for the water itself, but they're not even contributing to the local tax base of that community.
And the DNR leased that property to them for 99 years for $63,000. Nothing.
And you see these semi-trucks traveling in one right after the other to pick up this water, which has been pumped from the ground, has traveled through 12 miles of stainless steel pipe. They've treated it with chemicals. They've put it in plastic bottles, which are a non-renewable resource. They're polluting our watershed the moment you've consumed the water.
And I'm sure a lot of it will end up right back up here because they sell Ice Mountain in the area. So it's ludicrous. They make bags of money giving our water back to us.
They're being sued in 5 states. In Zephyr Hills, they took so much water that there are huge sinkholes where the land is sinking. And I live on a farm, and I don't want my little stream to disappear, and they want to put more wells up in Everett.
My old sister, when they were doing their testing last year, she ran out of water at that time, and they were doing their 7-day test and 4-day test.
And my neighbor next to me is almost out of water, and all of this started after they started testing their wells.
We're fighting this battle, this David and Goliath battle.
We are having to have garage sales and bake sales and concerts and all kinds of little fundraisers.
Court is now in session. The Honorable Lawrence C. Root presides. You may be seated.
You heard us saying in other place, by the year 2020, we're going to have half the world's population without adequate water. My God, they're coming after Michigan's water. When Nestle came into Michigan, they said, we're a good corporate citizen, we're not going to hurt anything. We're responsible. During the trial, the company kept pumping during a season of drought.
Any of the predicted reductions in flow in dead stream will have absolutely no effect on that ecosystem.
The stream area in front of one of the clients' homes was basically a mud flat. I cross-examined the plant manager, and I said, look at these pictures, there's a mud flat here. Don't you think you ought to stop pumping? They kept pumping even then. Some of these small channels that flow away from these springs along the North Shore almost stopped flowing. The reality is, no matter what they said, there was significant adverse impact, and they kept pumping.
We had a petition drive, and a couple of weeks later, citizens are calling me and saying, someone knocked on my door, and it was a private investigator.
They even hired a firm that came around and went to people's doors, knocked on their door and said, did you sign a petition? And confronted these older folks.
What we did was we said, let's go back in time and look at who owned the water 1,000 years ago in Rome. And how has the civil law in Europe and other cultures handled this question of water ownership and use. And what we found was that water has always had a public aspect to it. This water has always been considered not owned by anybody. I mean, today we think, well, isn't that profound? It's not profound at all. I mean, that's just common sense. You look at the sun. Do you own the sun? Water is this transient gift on earth for life, moving and flowing. And inherent in its transient nature is the idea of common. Things that are not transient, like this pen, okay, you can pick up and own. Things that are transient, you don't own. The judge ruled, he simply said, look, a diversion of water for selling somewhere else that diminishes the flow or lake, the integrity of this flow of water is unlawful. It cannot be done. They do not have the proper right to do it, and he told them to turn off the pumps.
While he's getting the PowerPoint back up, the update is that community in Michigan, the Michigan Citizens for Water Conservation, have spent over $1 million in court fees, and you saw they do fundraising with bake sales. So this week we are in the midst of a week of action where we're supporting community groups all across the country that are working to keep Nestle out of their community and keep water in their local control. And so we're having people all across the country take photo petitions, which is basically a photo of you holding a sign, which is a message to the company to respect people's control of their water. And I could show you an example of one right here, but we have a table out on the back, and I invite all of you after the close of the conference to come do a photo petition with us. And here's a good example with the community group in McLeod, California that has the same issues in their community. So ask yourselves, is water a human right or a privilege for those who can afford it? Who will ensure that everyone can have access to the water that they need? Will it be corporations like Coke, Nestle, and Pepsi, or will it be our own democratically controlled towns and governments who are accountable to the public? Who gets water in times of drought? Well, some of you may remember there was the drought in the southeast United States in the summer of 2007, and Coke and its competitors continued to bottle water from Atlanta's water system at the same rate, despite the fact that residents were being asked to conserve. Who will have future generations' water needs in mind? And then, can anyone really own water? Can you own the rivers and lakes and streams? What about the rain? Can you own the rain? Well, in some cases, like when Bechtel took over the water system in Bolivia, they made it illegal for people to collect rainwater for their own use. So it's time to wake up, America, and think outside the bottle. Why? Because it's good for the environment, it's good for your pocketbooks, and it's good for our public water system. And there are tens of thousands of people right now who are thinking outside the bottle. These are a wide variety of folks, members and activists of our organization, students, business leaders like restaurant owners who are no longer selling bottled water. That in the left corner with the crafts is the owner of Chez Panisse, which is Alice Waters restaurant in Berkeley. And up top is the owner of Pacific Time, a restaurant in Miami, doing a press conference with us. And then, of course, all of you. Public officials are also a big part of the movement. So if you think about it, it's our mayors and governors who are at the forefront of making sure that we all have affordable and safe access to water, and who really understand the short-sightedness of inadequately funding our water infrastructure. And yet, even in these times of economic duress, a lot of taxpayer dollars are going toward buying bottled water for city offices and meetings and events. And so mayors have taken the lead on tackling this irony. And last June at the annual meeting of mayors, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, we worked to pass a resolution that called on cities all across the country to phase out their spending on bottled water and then take steps to support their public water system, like install more water fountains in public spaces. And here you can see me with Mayor Chavez of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and former Mayor Cootie of Fayetteville, Arkansas, who really championed forward this resolution despite aggressive lobbying by the bottled water industry to defeat it. They had a counter resolution on the table, but that did not go through. And now I'm happy to report that at least 60 cities have issued a bottled water ban in their city, and now we are working to mobilize governors across the country to follow the mayor's lead. And there's quite a vibrant campaign here in Connecticut. The state is spending $500,000 at least on bottled water, and it's a contract with Nestle's Poland Spring, and that's just for offices. So what you can do. First, take the tap water challenge. This is a great public education tool where basically you set up a table and put up bottled water against tap water, and people come by and see if they can tell the difference. And it's just a really fun and engaging way to talk to people about this issue and get them to start to think outside the bottle. So I'd encourage you to do it yourself and then organize one wherever in your community. And then take the Think Outside the Bottle pledge. This is a pledge to opt for tap water over bottled water and to support public water systems. And it's not only a personal commitment, but it's also a way to demonstrate that there's a broad movement of people out there who are turning back the tide on corporate control of our water and who want to rebuild the political will for strong public water systems. And you can also see there a window decal that businesses put up in their window to say that they've gone bottled water free, as well as a bookmark for a guide that we co-produced with the Center for a New American Dream on bottled water alternatives. So it answers technical questions for institutions in governments about how to make the switch away from bottled water back to tap water. And you can download all of these as well as other resources on the website, which is thinkoutsideTheBottle.org. Third, organize your own community. So whether it's your neighborhood or your school or your workplace or your place of worship or an organization you're a part of, educate them about these issues, run a tap water challenge, get them to take the pledge. And then get yourself on this map. So this is a map on our website of all different kinds of governments and schools and businesses and others, organizations that are thinking outside the bottle, that as an entity have committed to going bottled water free and doing what they can to really rebuild support for public water. And I encourage all of you to work on getting on this map, and particularly the students out there. We have a vibrant student network of 150 schools working on the campaign. I hear there's a very active Beyond the Bottle campaign here in Connecticut College, which is great, working to reduce the use of bottled water on campus and ultimately, like Washington University of St. Louis just did, getting the whole campus to go bottled water free. And then lastly, you can join the team. So we have lots of ways to get involved. We're a membership-based organization, and we really do rely on the folks who are invested in this work to support us as a member. You can also take urgent actions with us just by opening up your email and responding. And then we have, even now, we're fortunate to have quite a few jobs of a range of experiences, as well as year-round internships and a very exciting summer internship program. So if you're interested in any of those, you can look at the website or talk to me. And before going on to the last slide, I would like each of you to take action right now you have an informational packet, hopefully, and in that packet there is a pledge, the Think Outside the Bottle pledge, and if you could just pull out a pen and sign that and check the box to get more involved, and we can let you know what else you can do. If you have a particular idea, like a school or an organization you want to mobilize, write that down there, and detach the bottom part, pass it to the end of the rows, and we'll have folks coming and collecting those. If you didn't get a packet for some reason, we'll be here afterwards. We have a table in the back with more information as well. So with that, I encourage all of you to contact us to find out what you can do to get involved, or if you have any questions that aren't answered today.